Hi, this is Gina Lazenby and welcome to my video blog. Today I'm in Sydney with my good friend Dr. David Paul, leadership expert and also expert in complex change. Hi David.
Hi Gina, nice to see you again.
Great to see you again. Now, the interviews that we did earlier in the year, we did a series of conversations about feminine leadership and we had a lot of people very interested, so I am really pleased that we can continue our conversation.
Indeed, and at the moment it's very topical.
Yes.
And as we enter the new year, 2013, I think it's even more important that we talk about this issue more and more.
Yeah. So in the papers this week, we've got Julia Gillard's always in the papers, Australian Prime Minister, but she's in the papers at the moment. There's an issue about something from her past that there was a wrongdoing. She wasn't involved in the wrongdoing, but it was in her circle. It was in her sphere.
Right.
And she's getting hammered in the press, isn't she?
Yes.
And I did actually speak, aside from this, I actually, talked to some women actually about what they thought about her, and people were saying that they didn't like her, and I said, what is it about her? And they said, well, she's indecisive. And I thought, crikey, how do you know what's going on behind the scenes? If the public image is indecisive, I can't believe she's in that position and she actually is indecisive. So she's getting a hard time, isn't she?
She is.
Why is that?
A couple of things. I think firstly is that the great things that she's doing is not really getting out into the media.
Are they not printing them?
No, they're not.
Or are her people not getting the news out?
They're not kind of presenting Julia Gillard in the right light, if I could put it that way. Whereas I think many others who accomplished very little are making a big song and dance about what they're doing. Whereas Julia, I think, is one of those people who is, we have a big company called BHP and its theme is the quiet achiever. Okay. And I think Julia is one of those people who's doing it very quietly, but is not making a big song and dance about all the things that she's achieved. I'll give you one example. Yeah. The carbon tax. It's very divisive in Australia, but yet the world, the United Nations, wants it to be a major part of their agenda throughout the world. Yeah. So we're in some ways leading the world in something like this.
In having a difficult conversation. None of these things are easy, but she's having difficult conversations.
Right. And if we don't do this, we are going to be held responsible for not going forwards, for not being visionary. But you're right, going back to the topic you mentioned, she's having a hard time because people are not respectful of our head of state. And I think that is one of the reasons why that she is in this kind of trouble.
I think there's a trend in being possibly less respectful to heads of states than we used to be, and maybe it's a good thing to be disrespectful, but the media does challenge people, and
sure.
that's good. Do you think she's having a more difficult time because she's a female leader?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. And in fact, the question is, if that was a Margaret Thatcher sitting there, would you give her such a hard time? If that was a Bill Clinton sitting in that chair, would you give them such a hard time? I think particularly that she's a female, she's the first Prime Minister of Australia who is a female, she's getting a lot of flack.
Are we expecting more from her?
We're expecting perfectionism. We're expecting not 100%, but I think it's 110% if I can put it that way, which is impossible. 100% is 100%.
Well, I mean, we all have our faults.
We do.
We do expect perfection from leaders.
We do.
Let he who is without sin.
Yeah.
That's the first stone.
Indeed.
But still, it's not so much about the wrong because we don't know that. Yeah. But it's really what I'm talking about here is how the story is treated and how she's treated consistently. Now that famous speech that she made recently, the misogyny speech, where she let rip. She really did let rip at the opposition leader, which is good and bad. I mean, it brings the conversation out there. It's the first female leader who's really brought the conversation about what she feels, how she feels treated by men. And I was reading that the Australian dictionary has changed the meaning of misogyny from hatred of women to disrespect.
Absolutely.
Of women.
Absolutely. But I think what our Prime Minister also did in that speech is also showed the underlying attitudes of accepting those kinds of thinking and ideas and behaviours was okay up till now. I think there is an underlying attitude of this is how we treat women, and it's okay. But the fact that she had to articulate it, I think, made a big difference.
I think she did it very well. It's difficult to say she should have been more measured. And I don't think that, I think, you know, in that environment you have to have a strong voice, and that's what she did.
Yeah.
She kind of...
But the power of that speech was she gave chapter and verse. You know, in other words, she said, this is what you said, this is what it means, this is how you made me feel. And she gave clear examples. It wasn't just a one-off example. It wasn't just a one-off, you know, thought or an idea. It was over a period of time. And I think the power of that speech was big. And it's one of the most downloaded YouTube videos, apparently, in political history throughout the world. But I think one of the things that she did very, very well is that she said, this is how you make not just me feel that way, but women in general.
Yeah, it was a great point. I mean, he has been known to have said she should make an honest woman of herself.
Of course.
The fact that she's not married. I mean, how many other leaders do we comment on their marital status?
Do we make an honest man of a man who's sitting in that chair? We would never dare say that. It would be so wrong. But yes, you're right. It is an underlying attitude and thinking that's there.
Well, there are mixed messages, because we do have this attitude about family values and marriage, and we did actually, I say we, the media did pressure on our opposition leader. Ed Miliband was pressured, I think, into getting married because he was leader, and I'm sure he was going to get married anyway. I can't remember the story at the time, but it didn't. It followed quite quickly on from his becoming... It is
social pressure. I mean, it is to be accepted in certain positions. You have to be. But then again, look at people like Condoleezza Rice or others. I mean, they're not married, but yet they hold positions of authority. Why is that? Because there is a circle that supports them. There is a head of state that says this is absolutely okay. There is a media that wouldn't touch those kinds of issues. Why? Because she is bright, she is articulate, and she actually leads from the front. And I think women are just coming into knowing what that power is.